All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Burgos with Alphanova Consulting. In case you're unfamiliar, we are a consulting firm that helps manufacturers drive profitable growth through improvement of execution of operations, strategy, and culture. And I've decided to start a series of conversations, podcast style, with different industry executives to share insights about their experiences, their journey, that hopefully, share some or help you gain a nugget or two from every conversation that you can apply in your business. And today I am joined by Bryan Gresock. He is an industry veteran. He's had experience with several many industries in different many roles. So I think we'll have a very insightful conversation about leadership lessons, culture, teamwork, all those things. And so without further ado, we've got Bryan joining us. Welcome, Bryan.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate being here. Look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely, me too. Before we get started, I just wanted to tell everybody listening that this is not a traditional interview. It's just an informal discussion. We'll talk about different topics that are of interest to everybody in manufacturing, just sharing experiences, real world insights from leaders just like you. So let's go ahead and dive in. So, Bryan, why don't we start by you sharing a little bit about your journey and what led you to where you are today, where you've been, and what you've done so far.
Yeah, that's a great segue. So, grew up in Michigan and actually kind of stayed away from the automotive industry and went right into kind of going into Indiana, where I graduated Purdue, and then went to work for a really amazing company as a contract manufacturing company. And that allowed me to be exposed to a lot of different industries right off the bat, right? So they weren't specific to one industry, but that gave me a really good background on quality and continuous improvement. And then from there, I used that kind of foundation of that continuous improvement and quality foundation to really springboard into the operations. And then really here recently, president of a manufacturing organization, and helped grow their sales and kind of reformat how they do business. So it's really interesting. Each step in the journey in manufacturing is always kind of a small rung that builds on itself. And every experience I've had helped that next step, if you will, to be a better leader in the manufacturing space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that. So, we all go and see different things, and I always wonder, at least for me, it was something impactful in my career, but we all have the choice to go down the technical path or go down the leadership path. Evidently, you've started. It sounds like you started on the technical path, but you took later on the leadership path. What influenced that decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I had a pretty pivotal kind of like turning point in my career. I was really technical, loved the technical side, right? Went to engineering school, loved that whole portion of it. But I had a gentleman that was kind of the COO of the company I was working for, and he, for whatever reason, befriended me as a mentor and really took me under his wing. And right from a personal experience of what his relationship meant to me and how much more that I was motivated just by this gentleman's interest in helping my career really turned kind of the page in my book of going, well, if I can still mix some of the technical stuff and still know engineering, but have a profound impact on people's basically careers and help motivate and execute the vision that the company has through just diving into leadership, helping them grow as a person, grow in tool sets that they may not be aware of. That was the kind of the turning point of going, you can have both, but you tend towards the management side and helping people grow as opposed to, maybe doing a new design that you're really proud of.
That's awesome. Don't we have all mentors and influencers that just add to what we become over time? So let me ask you this: how important is to you the culture of the business of the company that you're working at, that you're leading? How important is that for you?
Culture is huge. I mean, every time I go into a different organization, right, every organization has slightly different cultures. Some could be similar, others could be vastly different. But I think the culture really sets kind of what is acceptable, sets how accountability gets structured within the businesses. And so to me, culture, I know it's a buzzword and people talk about it, especially with accountability and culture. And what does that all mean? Personally, I think it's really the accumulation of just the heartbeat of the organization, how it actually behaves. What does it tolerate? Does it tolerate, poor performance and those people get swept under the rug, or is it addressed immediately? Are they caring for the people that they hire? So to me, um, if I say culture matters because it's really the DNA of that organization and how they work.
Yeah, I say that culture makes you or breaks you in the long term for sure. So let me ask you this. This might be insightful for people, both leading or as candidates. Like when you're going to hire into a company, I'd love to hear your thoughts around gauging the culture as a newcomer. First, when you're going through their interview process, and then once you join and you're giving the reins, you go through that period of, okay, who's who, what's the culture like, and all that. Can you walk us through your thought process around going
Yeah.
in, and then once you're in, what's that process like for Bryan?
So I'm a big fan of what's called the predictive index. It's basically a personality assessment tool. And even though I can't give it to the person I'm interviewing with a lot of times, there's a lot of framework questions that be asking to try to feel out kind of if person's an extrovert, an introvert. Are they technical? Are they non-technical? How do they drive their sense of urgency? And then, about kind of just where they fall on the perspective of what does accountability mean, to bring that culture question back up. What does accountability mean to them? And so to me, there's a lot, especially coming in as a manufacturing leader in a high profile role. A lot of times, what I've learned, especially in the last 3 roles I've held, is asking about the timing of the results, because a lot of people will see the opportunity and know how to go fix it, but then there could be a mismatch of expectation on how to realize those results and when, because you have an owner or a CEO who wants results immediately, right, and very impatient
Yeah.
for results. And then depending on the complexity of the situation, it could take some time to develop that groundwork to achieve those results. So to me, you feel it out, but you got to do your homework on where they're at. Ask a lot of questions. That's what I've learned in my last 3, 4 interviews. Don't talk as much about yourself, but ask, what is going on in the organization? Why are you looking for a new leader? What would make this new person successful within your culture? And try to draw out where they can talk through kind of the ins and outs, that you can get a kind of a heartbeat of what will be successful look like for you or another candidate coming into that organization.
And that's a great answer. As you were talking, I was thinking, to me, one of the most important qualities of a leader is emotional intelligence. And I think what you're describing it's an element of that, right? Understanding who I have in front of me, what are their needs, what are their priorities, how do they think, how do they operate, all kinds of things will put you closer in touch with the culture of the organization. And so I want to ask you, like, once you join, let's say, what are some telltale signs for you that you see or look for, whether they're good or bad, that make you think, okay, this is the right fit, or there might be some things that need to be fixing here. What do you look for once you're in the door?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me is collaboration. I love organizations that have a high sense of urgency. I'm really keen here recently. We get death by meetings quite a bit, and a lot of people tend to use meetings as a way to time manage their workspace and their work time. But what ends up happening is you disrupt everybody else's productive hours of really focusing on game changing kind of throughput. So to me, watching where the time spent for individuals. Always on the lookout for high performers that are in the wrong seat. And what I mean by that is a lot of times you'll have a technical person that has very low emotional intelligence, but they're in charge of the team because they're the highest technical ranked person. In a lot of cases, most of those teams will thrive better by moving not moving them out of the organization, but moving them into a different special projects or a single contributor role, and really letting the team kind of coalesce and grow. And so I think, those are the things that as a leader, it's funny because everybody thinks these manufacturing leaders have to be this super technical person that's going to be this superstar, rock star of a problem solver. And though we have the tools in the toolbox to help guide, what a lot of successful leaders do, especially in the manufacturing, is take those tool sets and really educate and then build more leaders underneath them. And that's what I'm looking for, is those potential next leaders that we can grow and help the organization really escalate and scale faster than, everything falling on me. Because again, I'm only one guy, right? You want that exponential kind of growth, and you can only do that through people.
Great segue for the next question I was thinking of asking you. So, what principles or leadership principles have helped you build those great teams or a strong team? How do you think? How do you what principles do you follow to do that? Because that's a tough task, or it can be.
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm a little different because I grew up in the garage building cars and welding in the garage and learning. So I'm a very hands-on, practical kind of leader. So my approach is a little different than others, but the way I approach it is I'll roll up my sleeve next to you, we'll build a rapport, and then I'll start infusing some of the tool sets that I've learned that have helped me be successful over the years. Whether those are lean principles or whether that's, the emotional intelligent principles. Time management's a huge one for me. There's a book called Time Management Magic by Lee Cockrell that was really kind of game changing for me younger in my career, and recommend that to any young kind of person coming into the workplace, regardless of the industry. It's just a great life skill book that will help you manage your time. But again, I approach it very relationally, and I don't necessarily have a playbook of these are the steps. I have kind of steps in my head, but I don't go, okay, sequence 1, sequence 2. You have a conversation, and you see where that goes, and then you meet that person where they need to be developed at the time they need, versus like if they check all these boxes, right? So you kind of, as a leader, have to adapt what you have known toolboxes to the situation to be really successful.
Gotcha. How about getting buy-in from your team? Because sometimes that can be a challenge, right? They could be good, they could be effective leaders. They just have a different way, or they don't buy into whatever idea it can be. It could be lean, like it's a very common thing, but it could be something else, even safety or some quality or some new product. How do you go about getting buy-in from your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of times, number one, communication. I know that's a buzzword that everybody uses, but you can't over communicate change. Change is one of these things that people struggle with a lot, and they go through a normal curve. Was taught a long time ago that every change goes through almost like a loss of something precious to people, right? And then they have to get over that loss and grieve, and then they grow out of it. So communication's huge. The biggest thing that I felt has really helped me gain buy-in is getting the people that are the silent voices in the room to speak up, right? And there's many great tools out there, from, post-it notes, everybody ranking their ideas, and then everybody has a voice, right? And it helps pull out some of the maybe diverse thinking that some people that aren't comfortable being vocal but has really good ideas. I've found that those situations, the people that were the quietest end up being the biggest proponents to help drive the change. So it's really getting an inclusive kind of collection of people together, addressing the concerns, right? People want to make sure they're heard about what change could potentially happen and what's the risk. And it's okay to say, look, guys, I don't know all the risks, right? But we're going to feel it out. And if we walk down this path and we find something that's a risk, we're going to come back together as a team. And we're going to solve it. And I think creating that safety of thinking and the belief that as a team, we're going to solve this together, that formation really helps pull people in to gain that buy-in that's so critical for long-term kind of sustainment.
I want to highlight a couple of really good insights you shared there. One was pulling in the people that are quiet, the quiet ones. It's not that they're passively resisting. They might be supporting you, but they're just not vocal people, and that sometimes can be a challenge to get them engaged. So I think putting them in the driver's seat, in the front seat, like you said, that's a really good tactic there. And then the other one was, I'm going to assume here that you meant when you said, I don't have all the answers, you're being vulnerable with people. And I think there's a misconception still in manufacturing circles that being vulnerable can be a weakness as opposed to a strength. I see it as a strength, but still some people see it as a weakness. So thank you for sharing that. That's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me get a little bit more businessy or technical with you. So once you're in there, you gotta feel for the culture and whatever. This is going to happen in very short order, but you have to identify what are the priorities for the business, cash management, turning around the operation, the culture, whatever the case may be. Can you walk us through your mindset and maybe a little bit about the steps you go through to say, these are my top 3 things I got to focus on in the next 30 to 60 days and get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I think, there's such a great playbook out there for a lot of different businesses that have gone through this type of new leaders coming in. Harvard Business Review had the first 90 days. It's a really short book. It's a great kind of stepping stone if somebody doesn't know kind of walking into a situation. But the framework I typically use, I'm very data driven. So after one-on-ones and learning the people and just getting kind of a feel for where we're at, number one, gotta meet with the customers. That's first and foremost for me, because every business has to be customer focused. And so, getting feedback from the customers directly from their mouth, but then turning really quickly to data, right? Make friends with the finance department, try to get as much information that you can, maybe assign some tasks to them for some analysis. But then, your typical KPIs in operations and quality, right? Scrap rate, yield, first time pass. You look at your OTD, what is our on-time delivery to our customers? What's our on-time delivery from engineering to operations? And really just within about a week, build a metric board, right? Whether you do it manually or if you got it automated. Automation is great, but if you have to do it manually, man, that you can't beat a pen and a paper or an Excel file really quickly and pull together at least a synopsis of like, here's the direction that's really preventing us from scaling this business. I'll share an example just really quickly. Came into a business here recently as one of the leaders, and everybody thought it was a delivery issue was their only issue. Well, once we went through all these KPI, basically getting them mapped out and actually putting them on paper, we had a sales problem really quickly, and we were going to run out of work. And so we went on a pretty big, massive effort to grow the backlog and did that successfully. There were some bumps in the road, and we had to learn a lot about our customer base and some of our internal processes. But there again, if you don't really make sure the data is driving you, you may go down a path and use, the critical resource of time and your people on something that's not going to help you significantly improve your position as a business.
Yeah, that's a really good thought. Being data driven, making decisions using data, it's a smart choice. So very good nugget there. So let me get back to culture a little bit. Have you ever seen, because culture, like we said, like, it's a buzzword and people talk about it, but sometimes it's hard to make it tangible. So let me ask you this. Have you ever witnessed or seen yourself firsthand a company that has drastically improved their culture and seen some results that you can maybe not directly, but very close associate with that shift in culture that so that people can take a have a sense of the impact that working on your culture can have in your business. Because I think manufacturing right now with the labor shortage, that's becoming more and more front and center. So love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I give you a great example of there was a company I worked for in Indiana after my first organization. Walked in, and the owner had brought in somebody from a very corporate based large Fortune 500 company to run, a $9 million small job shop, and very smart individual. But the culture that he brought to the table was very rigid, very drove teams away from each other, siloed the individuals, and was really stifling the performance of the company. And ultimately, that gentleman was moved on. It just wasn't a good fit for him. But the culture that he tried to instill had some remnants. I came in on the heels of that. And when we started having one-on-ones and bringing in, the team, like we talked about earlier, as a collective group to talk through this, it was met with some resistance because they were already like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing? You're asking us of our opinion." And through about 4 to 6 weeks, right, we broke through some of that, but we went from 9 million to about 15 million in the course of about 16 months. And it really was the culture change, because we didn't change the workforce that drastically. I mean, we might have added some heads here and there. So the talent was a talent that we had. It was extracting that talent out and really getting them to work together much better than they were before. So I would say culture always beats strategy every day of the week, but you got to invest in it. Great example of that is culture doesn't change immediately. You can have some really good kind of shots in the arm to help generate that change, but it's the constant day-to-day discipline of what you accept and what you don't accept in the business that creates that culture long term.
Yeah, no, great example. Is it, I don't know if you can recall from back then, but I find it interesting that when this other individual was hard on, it seems like the company took a step back culture-wise, and of course, giving you all the credit, right, in the team, you moved it to a more favorable place. Any ways that could be measured and tangible? Like, did you see any difference, either negative from the previous individual, the previous leader, or and yourself in terms of like financials or operation results or some other tangible that you can say, we saw a difference here?
Yeah, I think profitability was, for every CEO out there, that's huge, right? So profitability increased by about 30% just at the bottom line. The big metric that was the most tangible was the turnover rate dropped significantly. We were in the double digits, approaching the 25-30% turnover, which is pretty tough, especially in our kind of industry and manufacturing. As much as you invest in training, to lose somebody that frequently, you're pouring a ton of cost into training. We got it down to where we were cracking into the single digits. We didn't quite get to where we were like 7 or 8%, but we were in that 9 to 10% right on the doorstep. So, culture has tangible results. The problem is you got to be very, very clear on your KPIs, working directly with HR, working with finance to really kind of connect the dots of what that KPI and the changes that you're working on, how they really kind of affect the business.
It's really good. Imagine culture, something that feels so ambiguous and subjective, tied to profitability. So, no, to our listeners, culture is real and it's impactful in a very big way. One element that I feel it can throw a wrench on your plans is having people that are a poor fit And there's all kinds of names for these people. These are the people that are amazing at their job. They're very proficient, but at the same time, their character, I guess, diminishes their positive impact. And so that in turn, it looks like it's hard to work with these people. Sometimes they can be rude, they can be aloof to the team, things like that. Tell me about what's your thought process on those people? What do you do? How do you handle them? And how critical condoning that environment is to culture.
Yeah, I mean that's always a tough one for a leader, right? That's one of those paradoxes you end up kind of really wrestling with. There's really no easy, clear decision, right? You definitely want to have the team's performance up, but you also don't want to disrupt a loyalty, right? A lot of times these people have been part of the business for 30 years, right? Very historic person, very loyal to the business, been through the tough times, and can be very smart as well. So, the way I approach it, there's no one size fits all solution to whatever situation, but I really try to seek out, what makes you happy. A lot of times these people are very eager to share that I don't want to manage people. Like, okay,
Seen
now
that
that we
too.
got that on the table, that's good to know, right? And so it's happened where a lot of people get a round peg to try to go in a square hole, and you just try to unpack it, right? Really listen to them, really value what they can bring to the table. But then if you can, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but if you do have the position capability to where you can move this person into a single contributor role, or a role that maybe is a research, maybe you send them out on the road with the sales guy as a technical guy, right? He doesn't have to be the sales guy, but he's the technical response guy in front of the customer, but not managing people. I've seen a lot of times you take that management requirement away and you really help them focus on their technical skill set, and they flourish, right? They're less aggressive with employees, they're calmer, their engagement goes up. So to me, it's you really have to take each situation at the same time, but ultimately you have to move them, whether it's inside the business or help them move on outside the business, to a role that really fits what they're looking for.
That's really good. I've seen several examples of that, and it can be very productive in a lot of ways for the individual, the anxiety of leading people, and so forth. So that's good. Not always having to exit them out of the company, maybe just finding a different role for them.
Correct.
So let me ask you this: sometimes these decisions, these conversations, these changes take time, and your owner, your senior leaders, or whoever is above the board of directors, it's it's the sense of urgency is very high. So how do you balance that sense of urgency of we need results, we need high profitability, we need growth, and we even haven't talked about a sales force. But in any case, you're trying, there's energy for that, but yet you have to do a lot of these or make a lot of these long-term changes. How do you balance that pressure versus knowing I really have to work on this side of this while balancing the pressure of results from board directors, owner, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think that's always going to be a challenge because everybody wants results faster, right? They all want the performance immediate. What I would tell you is that, in those situations, what I've learned both recently and in my past is that over communication of progress. So whether or not you're making the progress you expected or not, still try to update the owner, the board on a regular cadence. One of the things that I instituted here recently was a president's report, right? Every week I would write the key metrics that we were tracking, where we're at, here are the action items that we were trying to address towards that ultimate goal. So over communication, especially if you're not directly on track, right? Good. When things go well, communication is quiet. When things aren't going well, or if you're behind track, right, that's when the step up to communication. The other thing is you have to remind a lot of these very type A, highly driven individuals that things didn't get this way overnight, and things aren't going to get better and get into the success overnight either. So it's trusting the process, really trying to reinforce and build the trust that, look, we got the data is showing us, we got good indications early that we're going in the right direction, and really try to get them to understand that you are heading in the right direction. You got some small wins you can point to and some key metrics that you're tracking that are turning the corner, and then that should help you buy a little bit of time. But again, CEOs, and if I was in their shoes, right, you want to keep the thumb on the button, keep pushing, because again, that's near and dear to their hearts, their money, and that's why they look for leaders to help them grow the profitabilities, because they want to see a return. And so we can help them with that. We got to manage that timing sometimes.
Yeah, that can be a challenge, and that's where you're pushing an agenda, and you may have the wrong people, and it's dealing with them, finding the right person, turning them around, making organizational changes can really get in the way of a rapid improvement. So yeah, that's a tough situation there. So let me ask you this, starting to wind down here. What would be some good piece of advice that you would give a new leader up and coming, to be successful in this profession?
I think we touched on it a little bit. Do your homework, right? Have your questions that you're really trying to feel out the organization as you're going into either a new one or a promotion, right? We talked a lot about joining new organizations, but I think there's also the same type of philosophy if you're looking to gain a promotion within the same larger organization. So do your homework, research. And then the other thing is invest in emotional intelligence. That will get you further in your career than just technical alone, right? Technical is good, right? I'm an engineer by degree. It served me well, but really the turning point that really helped me kind of escalate my career was really investing into understanding people, what makes them tick, how to motivate them, how to be a mentor, and put aside some of the challenges you have outside of work and invest your time into really truly developing these people and getting to know them. So I think it's all about people, process, and if you get those two right, the profits will follow. The 3 P's that I always prescribe to. But those things, if you can do those right, you'll have a life world of a journey in manufacturing.
That's great advice. I appreciate that. So, where can people, find you, Bryan, reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, definitely check out my LinkedIn page on LinkedIn under Bryan Gresock. Search for me, I'm there. And just keep tuned. Possibly looking at maybe starting an organization of consulting, helping businesses find solutions. A little bit different than just a playbook. We focus more on kind of providing solutions at all aspects, from quality management to leadership growth to supply chain help. So stay tuned to that. And then, of course, you can reach out and contact me through my LinkedIn page as well, and be happy to connect with people and help them be successful in manufacturing.
That's good, man. I appreciate it. I really appreciate this conversation. A lot of good insights. We talked about emotional intelligence. We talked about culture, about being a mentor, taking interest in people, the timing. So if you found this conversation valuable, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or continue discussion if you'd like to be part of this. I'll be having more conversations like this. So if you're a manufacturing executive with good perspective to share on culture, on strategy, growth, let's connect. Thanks again for listening. And again, Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time. And I'll see you guys on the next one.